as much as 50% off your premiums every year for the rest of your life. 800-257-1257, toll free. Call Garden State Life Insurance for your free information today. 257-1257.
This is CNN.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to CNN Overnight. I'm Brian Christie at our studios in Atlanta. Day 2 of the G7 Economic Summit is underway in Munich, Germany. The summit began Monday for the leaders of the United States, Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and Japan. The war in Bosnia-Herzegovina was one of the topics discussed. The leaders agreed to use military force only to provide food and medicine to the besieged people. They agreed not to use force to end the war, and they stipulated that force would be only used if the United Nations Security Council calls for it. The anti-abortion group Operation Rescue says it will begin street demonstrations in Louisiana later Tuesday morning. Operation Rescue began a week of demonstrations in Louisiana on Monday. Louisiana has one of the strictest anti-abortion laws in the United States. Abortions in that state are banned except to save the mother's life or in limited instances of rape and incest. A federal district court has ruled the law unconstitutional, but the ruling is being appealed. Lawyers for a pregnant California woman will reportedly challenge the ban on the abortion hormone RU-486 in a New York federal court Tuesday. The Bush administration has banned the abortion-producing hormone, which is legally available in France. Customs agents confiscated the drug from the woman at a New York airport last week. The woman, identified only as Leona, is seeking the return of the pill. HomeFed's 206 branch offices throughout California will be open for business as usual Tuesday. Federal regulators seized HomeFed Monday, 3 months after the savings and loan was put under a program designed to find buyers for failed thrifts. The thrift is the 8th largest savings and loan in the United States. It is also the largest savings and loan transferred to the Resolution Trust Corporation. I'm Brian Christie. We've got more coming up. Stay with us.
From Washington, Crossfire. On the left, Mike Kinsley. On the right, John Sununu. Tonight, Veep Stakes 92. In the Crossfire, Chris Matthews, Washington bureau chief of the San Francisco Examiner, and Paul Gigot, Washington columnist for the Wall Street Journal.
Good evening. Welcome to Crossfire. Who will be Bill Clinton's vice presidential nominee? According to Newsweek, no source ever knows anything useful. All rumors are inevitably false. But that hasn't stopped Guess the Veep from becoming Washington's favorite parlor game, and it certainly won't stop Crossfire from playing a few rounds. Among the names bouncing around town, Senator Al Gore, Congressman Lee Hamilton, Governor Mario Cuomo, Senator Harris Wofford, Senator Bob Kerrey, spelling expert Dan Quayle. Only kidding about Quayle, but is Bush kidding when he says he won't drop Quayle from the Republican ticket? Should he be kidding? And what about Ross Perot? Even independent candidates need a running mate. Whom would you pick, assuming John Sununu is not available? John?
Chris Matthews, the only filter that Bill Clinton has talked about publicly is applying a litmus test on abortion. Is that really the most important litmus test he's going to apply?
No, but I think the person will be generally pro-choice, and I think that Harris Wofford of Pennsylvania qualifies, and I think Lee Hamilton, although he's against federal funding of abortion, qualifies, but narrowly. You're right. I think you're onto something. I think it is a litmus test.
That's one of the rare times, though, a president's talking about special interest as a criteria for selecting a candidate.
It's point of view. It's not just special interest. I mean, a lot of American women who don't belong to any club are for choice, and I think that the Democratic Party as an organization is pro-choice, and I think he's looking for a candidate that reflects that view.
One of the amazing
By the way, most Americans are pro-choice, John.
One of the amazing facts of this whole process is that if he wanted to pick someone from California, there's really not a Democrat of national stature he can take from California.
That's right. You've got the most popular man in the state out there, Governor Wilson. Yeah. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of unpopular Republicans in that state.
No, but I'm serious. Now, if you were sitting there as a Democrat advising Governor Clinton and saying, here's a list of the Californians you ought to consider, you end up with a blank sheet of paper.
That's right. That's been the problem for a while.
I'm talking about that as a real problem.
That is exactly what the problem was with George Bush 4 years ago. He wanted a California, and they couldn't find anybody.
Before we get to the serious discussion, Paul, I have to knock this litmus test question around. Is it even conceivable that the Republican Party would ever nominate someone who wasn't anti-choice on abortion?
Well, I don't think that that's been a litmus test at all. If it was, I mean, David Souter's turned out not to be a litmus test candidate for the Supreme Court. Come on, I mean...
Can you imagine the Republican Party, which says that they're in favor of a human rights constitutional amendment, nominating someone who's pro-choice on abortion for vice president? Come on.
Well, it would probably not happen, but I bet you in 1996 it will happen, but not this year. I mean, the president's not going to change. He's going to keep Dan Quayle on the ticket. It's not going to be an issue this year.
Well, actually, they're somewhat balanced because they've got Barbara Bush, who's pro-choice.
All right. All right, let's get to serious business. Do you know anything?
Nothing more than Chris Matthews, so obviously no.
All right, well, let me try something on you. I'm shocked.
Perfect reference point.
I'm shocked to say this. I buy Richard Nixon's logic, which is the vice presidential nominee can only hurt the ticket, can't help it.
And I'm shocked that I agree with you.
Well, doesn't that point to one guy, Senator Al Gore, who's already been vetted? The press has gotten all over him, done their worst, John, that they could possibly do. They haven't found anything. So he's clean.
They've forgotten to mention that he discovered Willie Horton as an issue in New Hampshire, though.
That's true. He used Willie Horton against Mike Dukakis in the primary.
Yeah, Al Gore has a lot going for him. I mean, in one sense, the worst thing about Bill Clinton is that for his candidacy is his wife Hillary, and the best thing about Al Gore is his wife Tipper. I mean, she has a lot going for him. On values, she would make a terrific debater. I think she has a lot going for her. But the problem with Gore, one big problem he has is the age factor. He's 44 years old. He has the same generation as Clinton. And I don't know if we want two young candidates on the ticket.
Chris, notwithstanding the fact that you forget that Duke Majan would have made a good California choice.
He wasn't eligible.
Sure he was.
No, he had a problem. He had to stick around.
Absolutely eligible. The fact that geography is important, though, ought to be part of the equation. And would you recommend a California strategy, a Southern strategy, a Northeast strategy?
John, none of that stuff matters. This is yesterday's politics. What matters is in the media age, can you sell in those regions? Certainly a guy like Sam Nunn could do well in New York City. I think Cuomo could do well in a lot of parts of the country, particularly the West.
Certainly Gore.
The fact that Gore's from Tennessee is almost irrelevant culturally and in terms of the media age. I can see a Clinton-Gore ticket doing very well in California. They're young, they're hip, they're both pretty hawkish on foreign policy, relatively moderate on domestic policy. I can see them beating the sort
Doesn't it get all
You've
that,
got to understand the great opportunity
Doesn't
here.
it get all that with a Nunn plus the South?
Look, Nunn's not in the list right now for whatever reason, maybe personality. It seems to me that there's two big things the Democrats have going for. They have to look out for. One is they've got to move to the center, and their selection of the vice president has to evidence a move to the center because they can't run this 30-30-30 campaign that Jesse Jackson's talking about. You've got to go for 40. That is the stupid idea that you can win with about 39 or 38%. You need in the high 40s to win the presidency. You've got to count on that, and therefore you have to move to the center. Pick a guy like Al Gore, who's kind of a hawk on foreign policy, supported the Republican war in the Persian Gulf, generally was for the pro-Contra, pro-humanitarian aid. Definitely a man who's moderate on social issues as well. His wife, Tipper Gore, is very tough on this diabolic lyrics and records, which should fit right in with this whole social campaign the Republicans are leading. But I'll tell you, the other thing they've got to do is they're running against a vice president who most people think is demented, who isn't very smart, who's afraid to release his own academic records. So you run a guy, all he has to do is say, I'm smarter than Dan Quayle, and I served in Vietnam. And that's the Gore out. The Gore is brainy, and he went to Vietnam, and he's the same age as Dan Quayle. Dan Quayle is so slight mentally that he's afraid to release his academic records, except he didn't go to Vietnam.
Man, I like the Dan Quayle's odds in the debate with Al Gore, I'll tell you that. If you want to defeat Dan Quayle, the best thing to do is go with somebody like Lee Hamilton, somebody who's older from a different generation. And if you're going to play to the center, why not name Sam Nunn, a legitimate centrist conservative? Why go for somebody who has a kind of a liberal patina, but is basically, a conservative patina, but is basically a liberal? That's Al Gore.
Gore is perceived as a liberal everywhere.
Because the best way to bring out the problem with Dan Quayle is to bring somebody in his own age who served in Vietnam and isn't a hypocrite. Dan Quayle's problem is not that he didn't serve in Vietnam, it's that he's a hawk. He's a hawk that didn't serve in Vietnam.
Issue, knock him
he's
down.
A chicken hawk. And people don't like chicken hawks.
He's going to knock him down on issues like family values.
How about a spelling bee? How about a spelling bee? See who wins.
Look, you guys are just so happy you got spell check in your machines. You can make that kind of comment if you strip spell check out.
Well, at least we have it in our brain as well.
Yeah. All right, look, you were arguing earlier, Paul, that there should be someone older. I take it that was your argument. Well, and I take it you're being perfectly sincere in giving your advice to the Democratic Party here.
As long as we get Maurice Chevalier, I'm so glad I'm not young anymore. I mean, I never heard an argument about growing old in my life.
But look, they're saying you were looking for someone weighty, someone older, a big name. There's Mario Cuomo. Now, I can't help but think that you guys would just love to get your mitts on Mario Cuomo in a fall election campaign?
I think it'd be a terrific choice. First of all, you'd have a debate between the presidential nominee, Clinton, and the vice presidential nominee, Cuomo. They've been debating each other the entire primary season. They're going to end up debating each other during the campaign. I mean, you want to go with somebody of stature. Hamilton is that. He's safe. Look at a guy like Clinton, who is basically distrusted right now by about 50–60% of the American public, has to go with somebody who's safe, somebody who's been vetted.
Of course.
And that's somebody like Hamilton.
No one's ever heard of Lee Hamilton, I'm sorry to say. I mean,
precisely his advantage.
Congressman from Indiana.
I think it's really strange to run a candidate who can't carry his own state. And I think Lee Hamilton is a fine man, but no one believes. Indiana is ethnically Republican. Look, John, as you know, and we all know at this table, Indiana is ethnically Republican. It's endemically Republican. It's never gone Democrat. You can't get it if you're a Democrat, especially when the vice president comes from that state. So what are we wasting our time for?
Got a Democratic governor and a Democratic senator.
Look, is Quayle going to carry Indiana?
I think so.
Okay, what are we wasting our time with?
Well, is Gore going to carry Tennessee for
Yeah, I think he will, because the numbers are there. I mean, the fact of the matter is that those states are very much up for grabs, especially with Perot in the equation, and I think all you need is about 40–45%. Yes, you can do it.
I don't know about that.
I go back to none. None carries Tennessee better than Gore does.
None campaign. Put on the button. I'm just telling you that a couple of these candidates solve the problem. Every one of the people we've mentioned is smarter than Dan Quayle. Every one of them helps.
That's your version. That's your version of it.
Let's put them in a debate. You say the avuncular Lee Hamilton, he would do to him what Lloyd Bentsen did to Dan Quayle.
Do you
just
agree?
As well.
Do you agree that Al Gore would get creamed by Dan Quayle in a debate?
I think it would be a good, a heck of a debate. I think it would be better than a presidential debate. I'd give odds to Dan Quayle. Yeah, he's been thinking about these things these issues for 3 or 4 years. I like his odds.
How about when Quayle gives one of his jingoistic, gung-ho, let's go fight a war campaign speeches, and Al Gore says, I know war. I've been there.
Well, we'll continue the discussion on the vice president, and we'll ask what role Vice President Quayle should and will play in the 1992 campaign.
FBI statistics report that 1 in 40 cars will be stolen this year. Will your car be next? I'm not an actor. I'm Captain Jack Cleric. This space used to have a car parked in it. The owner will be back shortly to find that his car was stolen. He could have prevented this theft had he installed the club on the steering wheel of his car. The club is a bright red, tough tempered steel bar that cannot be cut and attaches to any car's steering wheel. Once attached, it makes steering impossible. Plus, because of its high visibility, an auto thief will walk away from your car and look for an easier, unprotected target. After testing, we recommend the club for Operation Lockup. So why not do what millions of other Americans and police officers are doing? Protect your car with the club. But please beware of cheap imitations. Make sure that the anti-theft device you buy says the club on the handle.
The Club, now available at most stores where auto supplies are sold.
Some car wash products may say wax on the label, but watch this dramatic comparison to Tannery Wash and Wax on the car. Tannery Wash and Wax is an amazing one-step formulation that applies a long-lasting polysilicone finish as it washes away even tough road film. He's using the leading wax car wash. She's using Tannery Wash and Wax. Now for the rinsing. Look, the Tannery side is beading. With Tannery Wash and Wax, you simply wash your car and it's waxed. It really works.
From London, one of Europe's financial capitals, and from Washington, D.C., the center of power in America, CNN brings you the first global newscast with Hillary Bowker and Frank Sesno. The International Hour, weekdays, 3 p.m. Eastern on CNN.
Welcome back to Crossfire. Tonight we're discussing the political role of vice presidential candidates, how they're picked, and what they add to the ticket. Our guests are Paul Gigot, Washington columnist for the Wall Street Journal, and Chris Matthews, Washington bureau chief for the San Francisco Examiner. Chris, the vice president's got a solid lock on the conservative bloc of votes in the country. He's got a philosophy that at least people understand. He's got more foreign policy experience than just about any ticket the Democrats can put together as a whole.
He's dynamite.
You want to explain that one?
He's going to, and
he's traveled a lot,
and he's been involved in political campaigning for this ticket, for a ticket in the past.
And after 4 years of tremendous exposure, as you've outlined it, lots of travel, lots of picture taking, the American people look at him and they see a deer stuck in the headlights. They see a man scared of the camera, scared of the country, and they see a man who is not, by any stretch of the imagination, an American leader.
They see somebody ringing the bell with their issues their way.
Yeah, if you were stuck in a lifeboat somewhere, would you want him running the boat?
I have absolutely no problem with
Your friend Bill Kristol and Quayle's chief of staff has had 4 years to work on this guy.
There's a leader.
They've been working very hard on him. They've been telling him what to say. They've been putting thoughts in his mouth, if not in his head, and it hasn't worked. He's a loser. Wouldn't it make sense to dump him?
It'd make absolutely no sense to dump him. Look, Dan Quayle is the guy who picked Bill Kristol in the staff of aides. If a Democrat had picked him, you'd be picked somebody like that, you'd be cheering. The point is that Dan Quayle, if you look over at the White House and you took an intellectual pulse, Dan Quayle is the only reason it's beating. I mean, he's the only one arguing for a legitimate agenda. He's the only one arguing strong for an economic growth agenda, for a legal reform agenda, which I think even you agree with a educational choice. I mean, he's the only one over there giving George Bush a reason for voters to give him a second term.
How do you explain the failure of the American people to share your enthusiasm for Dan Quayle?
I think part of the problem is he's still very lousy in front of the cameras. I mean, when you look at the guy in private, the way he works a room, a small group, even a big group with the cameras off, he's very effective. When he gets on television, somehow it just doesn't click, and I think that's a real legitimate problem for Dan Quayle. I think he's got to handle it somehow.
Does he spell better in private? I'm
the
serious.
guy who's supposed to be good on television has turned out not to be great on television.
How do you spell potato? I mean, what's the problem with this guy? Where did he go to school? Look, this adds up. I'm sorry, I have another line. The other line is, how come the guy went to college and refuses to release his grades? And DePaul University refuses to this day to put them out. That's going to take Geraldo Rivera to dig them out. What's the problem? What's the big secret about the guy's IQ? I'd like to see him take an IQ test. I don't think the guy's smart enough to be vice president, which is a hell of a statement. And if he can't spell, that's a prima facie case I'm right.
Look, you know, the public's got a nice theory about this. They figure if he's bad, you guys in the press are going to say he's good, and if he's good, you guys in the press are going to say he's bad.
Because the American people were watching him spell.
Every time you knock him, it does him good. He goes up.
Oh, was he right when he spelled potato?
Toes, T-O-E-S, drop the S, you got toes, T-O-E.
Well, tell the line. You're towing the line, I'll tell you that. And it seems a small point, but you know, leadership is a function of perception. What generals do you follow? What does Patton looks and acts like a leader? Eisenhower acted and looked like a leader. If you don't act and look like a leader, if you don't walk and talk like a duck, how come he's a duck? How do you know he's a leader?
That's the criteria that folks are going to apply to the ticket as a whole.
The reason he's on the ticket is they don't know what to do with the body. Where do you put him? You take him home, you send him home to Maryland and say, we're making him Commerce Secretary,
he's there
and
right
she'll
now.
say that's not a promotion.
He's there right now reinforcing a conservative base.
You know, you're absolutely right. The one thing Quayle has made an issue of that I agree with him generally on is this question of legal reform. But I have to wonder, did Quayle really think this up? Here he was. I don't even have to wonder. I know he didn't. He was a lawyer for 20 years before this happened. He never wondered one peep about his concern about the terrible things lawyers were doing in the country. All of a sudden, he makes this big speech in front of the ABA, the American Bar Association. He's got handlers. He's been created. Right. This was all invented. It's all
look at Quayle appointed these people, number one, who are helping him. That's the point of having a staff, Michael. You appoint people to help you out.
Take this issue that you've never given 2 seconds thought to your entire life and make a big deal out of it.
Is that leadership? Is that leadership? Want legal reform. Are you saying that lawyers don't want reform of the legal system?
John, listen to me. I'm saying Dan Quayle expressed no concern about legal reform until the day someone had the bright idea of having him give this speech to confront the ABA.
In the Senate, I bet compare Dan Quayle's record in the Senate with Al Gore's. I bet you they came in the Senate about the same time. It's as good a record, if not a better record.
Good luck on that.
I mean, what is Al Gore talking to?
Legislative tort reform from day one.
I'll tell you one thing. It's embarrassing sometimes to watch Dan Quayle read the lines Bill Kristol writes. It's like he's not McCarthy, he's Charlie McCarthy. He's like a puppet reading the lines. You know, back in the 1940s, Joe McCarthy. That's right. I was a writer. Now, Joe McCarthy.
You take a lot of credit for writers.
No. Joe McCarthy, when he sat around with the boys back in the late 40s, they were trying to come up with an issue. How do I save my seat in the Senate in Wisconsin? Oh, how about anti-communism? Same thing. You get your advisors around and say, let's go after lawyers. They're unpopular. I mean, it's almost like Alan King. Who are we going to tell jokes about? Then he says, let's go after lefties in Hollywood. Let's go after them. That'll work. That'll keep me alive for a week.
Look, in the Senate on arms control, Al Gore's supposed to be a big expert on arms control. Spent 4 or 5 years reading about it. Well, look, Dan Quayle affected the INF treaty and got Sam Nunn to adopt one of his amendments that made it a better treaty. I mean, that was real legislation. Quayle did. Quayle.
Oh, come on.
He did. Quayle wrote the amendment. No, Quayle wrote the amendment.
Quayle wrote an amendment that Sam Nunn adopted, and that's your campaign for Quayle to be Vice
I'm just saying, look at one issue. No, that's just one issue of the record in the Senate, of the record. If you didn't have a potato, you'd have no issue.
Hey, that's new. We got a lot of old stuff. I want to ask you a simple question. Anybody here, is Dan Quayle respected by the American people as a leader? Answer no. That's what we're talking about.
Certainly more than any one of those non-entities you laid on the table as a list.
Come on. About a week. Look, first of all, White Benson, who debated him rather effectively,
is more respected than the top of your ticket. You think Quayle is probably respected more than the top of your ticket?
Well, I don't know. Not according to the polls, John.
No, I don't think so. Bill Clinton's numbers are going up. Bill Clinton's leading in the polls. Have you looked lately? Clinton is number one. He's number one.
Which poll?
The latest ABC, Washington Post
We look at the CNN polls. The CNN poll had the president.
Quayle has suffered as Bush has suffered, and his numbers have gone down as Bush's have gone down, and then that's going to happen because they're a ticket. And I'll tell you, but Quayle is trying to get
lower than Bush.
Yeah, they're lower, and with you guys beating up on them, no wonder. They're with.
Did you think it was a wise choice? Well, in 1988, would you have said pick him ahead of Dole? Pick him ahead of Domenici?
No, he wouldn't have been ahead of Lugar. He wouldn't have been my first choice for vice president. That's absolutely
Would he have been your third choice?
I don't know. My choice would have been Jack Kemp.
How far down would you have to go to say that this guy was worthy to be vice president? I don't think he's anybody's
Not as
first
far
or
as the
last
caucus.
choice. I'll tell you, the Republicans, if they hadn't picked him, they would be picking Kemp now. Danny Brains.
Absolutely no way.
No way. Kemp would help the ticket.
Jack will talk about the urban issues constructively for the president, but the vice president and the president make a perfect pairing up there.
Hey, at least when Jack Kemp goes down to the ghetto and talks to people, they listen to him. When this white bread type shows up in the tenements, who never had to work a day in his life, this swell,
like these Harvard Road types are running on the Democratic ticket.
You know where Bill Clinton came from? From a holler, from a patch down in Arkansas. This guy had his life handed to him. That was a great line about Bush they used in the campaign. He's on third base. He thought he hit a triple. What did Dan Quayle ever do?
All right.
What did he ever do?
What did he ever
write?
Yes, we got the point. We'll pause to reflect on that question, and when we come back, we'll talk about Ross Perot.
The legendary Ginsu knife. It was the sharpest offer on television. But now, there's the next generation. Ginsu World Class. It's quite simply the finest knife in the world.
You mean finer than our famous English knives? Finer than our German knives?
Yes, even finer than our own classic Ginsu. The high-carbon stainless steel blade has incredible strength. Even with abuse like this, it still never needs sharpening. Nothing cuts it like the Ginsu World Class. It's as simple as that. With its unique triple ground curved blade, you could easily pay $100. But not here. Ginsu World Class is yours for only $29.95, complete with this money-back guarantee and this lifetime replacement guarantee. Sharp offer, sharp value. Order now and get these famous Ginsu steak knives, plus these accessory knives, free. Ginsu World Class, a legendary cut above the rest. Order yours now.
For rush delivery, have your credit card ready and call 1-800-538-7272. Call from the U.S. or Canada. Or send $29.95 plus $4.95 shipping to Ginsu World Class, P.O. Box 8989-N, Buffalo Grove, Illinois, 60089. Order now. Call 1-800-538-7272.
On CNN tomorrow, hung up on telemarketing scams, how to avoid phone fraud on morning news. Then on Cryer and Company, today's top comedians tell why politics is so funny. All tomorrow on CNN.
Paul Gigot, imagine you're your fellow Silent T character, Ross Perot. You're running this quite unique campaign, independent campaign for president. How do you think through the vice president thing?
I think you try with all your might to get Jack Kemp to accept a vice presidential nod. I mean, you've got a guy who's popular with both parties, Democrats and Republicans. He can make the case for economic growth, which is going to be Ross Perot's best issue. I mean, he's got somebody who's going to fix the economy, and he comes up with an entrepreneurial pro-growth agenda, and Kemp is terrific at that.
And what are the chances that Kemp would do that?
I think they're real slim, which gives Ross Perot a problem. I think he's got to have somebody who does not have a real hard partisan edge to him, but has some kind of a stature, because this is a more important decision for him, frankly, than it is for either Clinton or Bush.
You would think Jack Kemp doesn't have a hard partisan edge?
No, I think if you look at the Democratic polls, he's as popular. He's probably the single most popular Republican among Democrats.
I agree.
Going back to Bill Clinton's problems in terms of selecting a vice president, does he announce early or does he announce late?
It's either Thursday or Sunday. I'd hold the Sunday if you can keep it secret. Well, you got to charge it up. You got to make it combustible.
What happens if Perot announces ahead of him, steals the week from him?
Steals which week? Next week? Well, it doesn't matter. You asked me whether I thought Thursday or Sunday. I think Sunday, next Sunday makes sense. Do it. Go right into the convention with a bang. Hold it to the last minute. Don't chicken out and do it this week.
Going back to Perot.
If you decided it, though, you have to put it out.
You really don't think Perot should take somebody more closely?
Perot is, I completely with Paul Gigot. He has to pick a person who's softer edged in terms of his personality, because you don't need two of these crazy sort of fanatics running together. It's just too hot. It's too hot a ticket. I think Clinton.
You think Kemp is a soft-edged
soft-edged personality, sure. Even though he's a hard positional policy. See, the big problem with Perot among Democrats is the civil liberties question. The joke in the cartoon in Newsweek this week was, I knew we shouldn't have voted against Perot, and then they look out the window of this couple and they see him parked outside, snooping on their house. This image, the civil libertarian problem, is very severe with him. He has to overcome that by picking a nice guy, John. He needs a nice guy as his running mate. He doesn't need a Sununu.
I'm not available.
I'm not available. All right. But I think that he's too tough. And I think Republicans, what I see happening is Perot ending up with 20-25% of the vote, mostly Republicans, if he picks a right-winger.
Wishful thinking.
Yeah. All right, well, there's been one too many plugs for Newsweek on this show. I think we better call it quits. Thanks, Chris Matthews. Thanks, Paul Gigot. Vice President Sununu and I will be back in a moment.
In today's business world, it's not uncommon to shell out a significant investment only to come up empty, or to find out your chances weren't as good as they once seemed. Well, for a limited time, Fortune magazine is going to give you a free shot at success. No tricks. Just call this toll-free number right now and you'll get the latest issue of Fortune magazine free. That means a free look at the most insightful, in-depth, and in-step business publication of our time. A free look at the hottest trends, the biggest success stories, and the people who make it all happen. If Fortune isn't for you, simply cancel and pay nothing. The free issue is yours to keep with no further obligation. But if you like what you see, you'll save over 50% off the newsstand price on your special trial subscription. That's 14 more issues, 15 in all. Issues like the celebrated Fortune 500 and Fortune's annual Investor's Guide, all for 3 monthly payments of only $9.77. Call now, and with your paid subscription, you'll also get the Fortune Portfolio, absolutely free. The Fortune Portfolio puts the office at your fingertips. It's a handsome briefcase with convenient pockets that hold all your important papers. Inside, it features a full-function calculator, a telephone address book for listing key business contacts, and a handy writing set. It's perfect for business trips, meetings, and seminars. So no matter where your business takes you, you'll have everything you need. Best of all, the Fortune Portfolio is yours free. Call now for a free look at Fortune magazine. You'll enjoy over 50% savings on your trial subscription. You'll get the Fortune Portfolio free. And even if you decide Fortune isn't for you, you'll get to keep your free issue. You just can't lose. It's a free trial issue, over 50% savings, and the Fortune Portfolio free. So call right now and take a free shot at success.
For a transcript, send $4 to Crossfire Transcripts, Journal Graphics Incorporated, 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203, or call 303-831-9000.
Well, John, starting from the premise that, like everybody else I know, absolutely nothing, I think it is going to be Al Gore. And what's more, I don't for a minute believe your protestations of delight. I think he'd be a very effective vice presidential nominee. He'd do good things for the ticket.
I think he's probably the most probable choice now, but I can tell you we're really looking forward to that
Now, you explain to me why, and I'll tell you whether I find it convincing.
Because I think Al Gore is going to have trouble looking more conservative than Bill Clinton, and I think Clinton needs somebody to be more conservative than he is to balance the ticket towards the middle.